Hello, Jack Olmstead, GMO Free News. I'm here again with the Flint Water Crisis. I know it's not going to go away anytime soon, so we just keep on hitting that nail with the hammer, with this digital hammer. I'm here today with Kelly Mooney. She's an independent journalist from Canada, 2 hours outside of Toronto, Canada. That's north of Toronto. Is that right, Kelly?
That's correct, yeah.
And you were, I guess, Kelly on the spot. We'd say Johnny on the spot, but you were Kelly on the spot on this story back in February of 2015. So this is kind of an anniversary since we are in February 16th. 2016.
That's right, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your blog, Coventina Speaks.
Well, I basically had heard about the water issues, I think back when, just after the first violation notices come out. And I really didn't know what I was going to do. It just sort of, how am I going to help? And
how did it get to your attention? How did you find out about it? Because you're in Toronto, Canada. You're far away from Flint, Michigan.
I'm actually only about 3 hours away, which is sort of the bizarre thing of it all. But it was on Twitter through the handle City of Flint, which is spelled with ones there instead of I's. He's been really the main voice, and we had come into contact just via Twitter, and that's sort of how I got involved, was because he was screaming and shouting and making a lot of noise on Twitter about it, and I just kind of thought, I wanted to help in some way,
What was he saying back at that time? We're talking January of last year. That's what got your attention, right?
Well, he had been talking about it a little bit before then, I think, but it basically that they're paying for poison water and very high prices, and he was talking about these violation things that they had been in violation of some talks, and I didn't know anything about it. And the more I asked him for, he was showing me the water reports, and I didn't understand what I was looking at. I didn't understand what TTJHM was, and so I just sort of researched it. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized, hey, this is, really bad. And I said, we just started talking, like, that this is a carcinogen. Like, I was like, this can be inhaled, it can be ingested. It's, this is really bad. And that's kind of when I decided that I wanted to help in some way, which way that was. Writing was about the only thing I could offer, and getting a hold of, Aaron was the first thing that came to my mind. And it was a long shot, it really was.
This is your first post. Can you talk about your first post? This is February the 9th, 2015.
Yeah. Well, the first pictures that you see there actually are from City of Flint's Twitter. Those are pictures from around his neighborhood. That's what you see. And I think the reason why Flint had gotten brushed under the rug for so long was because of the crime rates there, because it's a lost city. It was an industry heavy city for a very long time, but their crime rates were, I think, for like 13 years running, they were rated the most violent city in America. So I think that had a big play in why nobody wanted to cover this story. And so that's kind of what I wanted to show, was that, it sucks here. Life is hard. It's not easy. And then the thing that is the common denominator between all the people that I've talked to in Flint is that they're all really strong. If these people were protesting, this wasn't the only protest. These people were out there every day for like a year. no matter what weather, holding up signs and protesting and making a lot of noise, and still nothing was being done. So, and that's something else that I kind of wanted to show. And like I said, I had just started emailing Erin Brockovich, and I'm sure, you know what, like I'm sure lots of people were, and if you look at some of her Facebook posts for other water stories, there's a lot of comments, you know, you got to come to Flint, you got to come to Flint. But I think kind of what made the difference was I started showing her those water results and the testing and, you know, the bills and so on and so forth. And I think that's sort of what caught her attention on it. And she had said that at the time she was in Australia, and she said that she was sending her water expert, who is Robert Bocock, and he went and he did an investigation and made a report, and he did it all for free, and did that protest. Yeah, there he is with Melissa. So I mean, it just sort of, you know, when she sort of spoke out on Facebook about it, it kind of got, that blog post got quite a bit of attention. The Huffington Post here in Canada actually ran my story for 3 days, and it got more than twice as many views and retweets and than any other story for 2 out of those 3 days. So it caught a lot of attention, and it caught a lot on social media and the internet, and that's how sort of I got in touch with Leanne. Yeah, and what you're seeing there is pictures. Those are pictures that people who had heard of me and were trying to tell me, show me what they were going through. When I said that I was going to write about this, they were sending me pictures of their water, and you can see there's a huge difference. Like some people were getting this white, cloudy stuff. It looked like it was frozen, and then other people had this brown, what you've typically seen in the media now, that brown water. So that's basically how Leanne and I came into contact, which she had seen.
You write in this blog post that December 2014, the city sent out the following violation notices to the citizens warning of the contaminated water. Do you remember that?
I do. I think it was right about that time. Yeah, that city of Flint was, you know, tweeting about it. And there's a lot of other issues down in Flint. Like this is just really one of many. Like the KWA, when Flint detached severed their service from Detroit, and switched over to the Flint River, people noticed a difference within hours, you know. So he was tweeting about that, and he was tweeting also about the EM law and how they don't have the right to vote, and they have, you know. So it's sort of all those issues, I think, combined that really sort of got me interested. And because I think my understanding is, if I can recall this correctly, they voted to go to do the KWA, but they did not vote to come off of Detroit water. So it was, and at the time they were paying, I think, like 8 times the national average for water. So there was all those things happening all at once. I think that really made a difference.
Do people say that you are a person that shows empathy? Is empathy a quality of yours?
I would say, like, I would say probably, like, you know, there's certain things that kind of get to you on a personal level and you can't ignore, just because I think because I have children and I've been through very rough times, and you know, I can't imagine these things happening to my children. And so, when somebody comes to me and says, look at what we're dealing with, I find it really hard to just go, oh, I'm sorry, and walk away. I have a really hard time doing that, just because what if it was my kids?
So that was a compelling force for you, putting yourself in their shoes, thinking, if it was me, I need some help. I want somebody to speak out about this. You giving the voice to the voiceless. Is that something that rings true for you?
I think so, yeah, because yeah, absolutely. I think and that's who has approached me the most is the people who have, I've been approached by other people for different reasons, like with different whistleblowers who have been, I've been approached by people who have been in those schools where like they're for troubled teens and have been affected by that. And it's those types of people that come to me and, they want to tell their story, but maybe they can't, or they don't know how, or they're afraid of blowback from it, or maybe no one believes them. So you just kind of listen and, and, kind of decide for yourself, this is really bad, or this is fluff, So I think that's sort of how, that's just how I get involved, I think, in things.
So you're drawn to stories, situations that ring true for you.
Yeah. And I
Got to
think,
be real, got to be honest.
That's right. You have to be real and honest. And I think the media, like to cover the Flint water crisis down there, I mean, everybody's covering it, but what was different, I think what caught the attention of the media was when Leanne's story sort of made news down there. And because it's individual, it's personal. When you hear about an event happening, it gets easily brushed over, but as soon as it's a real life involved, as soon as there's children or a life, then all of a sudden it becomes real, not just to me, but I think to most people. If you just say look at our water, it's easy to just ignore it. But if you say, look at my skin, and look at my child is dying, or my, whatever, my dog has gotten sick from it, and so on and so forth, then I think that makes it real.
Well, it did make it real. And actually, there's a city council meeting on YouTube, which I've been through, which was in January 26, 2015. One woman has, I think, 5 kids, and she said, I didn't bring a sign to the meeting. I brought my body. And she rolled up her pant legs, and she showed the rashes, and she showed hair coming out of her head. But people didn't care. The local media didn't pick that up. The emergency manager that was sitting there at the time could care less. The elected representatives could care less. And people really didn't care that these individuals were experiencing this pain, because the experts said it's not the water. Water's safe. It's something else. It's not the water. That's what they continued. That's the drum they beat. And Leanne would tell you that she was called stupid for even mentioning that these issues were related to the water. So why don't you talk about how you got connected with Leanne?
Well, I think after I put that post out, I put it on Facebook, and by that time there had been Facebook groups created, and then so I had shared that with them, and I had shared it with Twitter, and actually I had a little kind of a secret weapon, like when you're on Twitter, randomly people will put you on lists, and I also went through my followers one by one and asked them to read my story, and I went I was put on different lists, and I went through those lists, and I searched Michigan Michigan handles, and I went through individually and said, please read this. It's important that we get this out there. And I think that's how, and then when they did, my other kind of secret is when I saw that they had retweeted the article, I went through and I thanked them one by one. Everybody that, I don't think I missed anybody. And then I realized that people were actually reading it. And they were saying, this is really terrible. That it got dialogue going. It got people aware of the situation. So I think that's how Leanne had heard of me. And then in April, she had sent me an email saying, she's been everywhere and they're not listening. And
before you get into that, would you consider yourself a social media maven?
No, I don't think so. I think I am who I am. And, the thing about Twitter is some people aren't real on there. They have a persona, and it's not who, I think for me, I am who I am. And that's, I think the same goes for City of Flint. He is who he is, and I just think that, maybe it's my politeness, my Canadian, thank you, sorry, type, way. But I just found that being polite and asking, not asking for money, not asking, not pushing anything, just saying, would you mind reading this? And people, instead of just retweeting it, I think they actually did. And that's how you get awareness out,
What's your educational background?
Well, I was a stay-at-home mom for 10 years. I'm a PSW by trade.
What's the PSW?
A personal support worker. So they're like a nurse's assistant. We go into people's houses and who are maybe, or they work in long-term care facilities. So they're kind of like a nurse's aide. And now that I had left my common law after 10 years, just in the last year or so. And so I've been kind of here. We're kind of still going through that process, but I will be returning to school shortly as I want to actually pursue the journalism career, because I had put that on hold for my kids, I think.
So you're going back to school to become a journalist. Is that
a journalist? Yeah.
The idea? And right now you consider yourself a citizen journalist.
Yeah, that's right. And I'll probably pursue that, for as long as I can. And once I'm able to, be a little bit more mobile. I live in a very rural area, so it's hard for me to get into the news and get into the current events. I have to kind of rely secondhand. So once I'm sort of over this hurdle, I'll be able to get more involved in the current things and do more.
I don't know. I'm in a very rural situation. I'm 2 hours outside of Seattle, little tiny town, Port Townsend, and I'm just using the technology to reach out to people. I know a lot of people in Flint, but I don't have to be there. And so have you. You've reached out to a number of people in Flint, and you've never been to Flint, have you?
No, I haven't. That's what I say to people is I did it with a Twitter account and a WordPress. So if I can do what I've done with those two things, and Facebook, right? I mean, then there's so much that you can do with social media now and different platforms.
So you believe you go to school to hone your skills in the social media journalism niche?
I think so. Yeah, it just helps, I think, to have that. Like for me, gives you a little bit more of a boost when you know, like I can sort of learn maybe different tricks and different, you know, those sorts of things, and just sort of hopefully expand my repertoire, I guess.
Okay, so anyway, I interrupted you. You were talking about April 2015 when you were chatting with Leanne.
Yeah, so she had contacted me, and I basically, it's just sort of snowballed from there. She had you know, I said, you know, yeah, well, absolutely, we'll get your story out. And I went to City of Flint and I told him, and he was a bit skeptical at first, you know, he was kind of like, but I kind of, we kind of nudged him a little bit, and I got all the information, I wrote the story. And at that time, and the NBC News just got a brand new anchor, and he happened to follow me on Twitter. So I messaged him and you know, I kind of said, you know, you should do this story. You know, you need to look at this. And it kind of skyrocketed from there. And that's how it came into the spotlight, I think, once they got her on on the news. Yeah.
Is this the article you're talking about? The April 9th, 2015?
The April 9th with is that from my blog?
This is from yes, this is from your blog. It would be
like the doctors. Yeah.
This is the second blog post that you posted.
The second one that I did a story sort of in between it that was just sort of because they had hit 1 year, and so I did do like sort of a recap, and then just shortly after that, Leanne, I put out the story, Leanne's story, which is the lead in the Flint water.
Lead in the Flint water. Let me get to that. Lead in the Flint water.
It would be the third one, yeah.
Doctors refusing to treat water-related health issues.
Yes. That's right.
Before we get into that, can we go back to the middle one here that you talk about 1 year later? Let's talk about this article that you wrote, or this blog post.
Yeah.
And you do have in here ABC 12 News. Is this somebody that you reached out to?
It was NBC. I'm not, you know, the station. It was Dave Bondi, and I think,
okay.
I think NBC. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's NBC.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Like that must be a link. That was just because I kind of wrote that sort of in between because there was so much, and City of Flint had suggested that, you know, like it's been a year and what's been done. And so I just kind of wrote that as a side thing to show here's what's after a year. This is what's gone on. This is what we know. And so because he was sort of talking about the fact that like in the local media and the local newspapers down there, you know, you've got a characters limit, you know, so
you got a what?
You know, like you've got a character limit. You can't write this big huge piece in the local paper, right? Like, so people were getting information in small little tidbits, and I think what he wanted, what he had asked me to do sort of was show a timeline of the crisis, what has happened and when, and how, like, what's been done from that point.
So this is your timeline.
Yeah.
For a whole year, and it stops April the 9th, 2015.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, yeah, and then right after that, I was the lead. The lead in the water. Yeah, and it kind of calls out some key players there.
Jeff Wright, is he a key player in your mind?
Yeah.
Tell us about Jeff Wright.
Jeff Wright, he's the drain commissioner, and so there was basically they have the ability to levy and taxes and raise raise water rates and everything like that. Now I believe he's also one of the CEO for the Carignan Water Authority. So he had a big part to play in coming off of the Flint, or coming off of the Detroit River and moving to Flint and pushing for that pipeline. I think there's a lot of people that are sort of responsible, rather directly or indirectly. He had actually owned a water consulting business right before he went on to the KWA, or went on to be drain commissioner. So I thought that was rather convenient. Now I've been told that he, like, when he was awarded the title of drain commissioner, which I believe is an appointed position from the governor, he, I think, closed down his water consulting business. But there's all kinds of dark money corruption happening with his side of things. He was an FBI informant. He's a rather shady kind of character. So
I see in your article, I see in your article right here, when the city council voted 7-1 to go back onto the Detroit pipeline, he said, Flint's water today is safe by all EPA and MDEQ standards, and the city is working daily to improve the quality. It is incomprehensible to me that 7 members of the city council members would want to spend more than $12 million a year to the system serving the Southeast Michigan, even if Flint ratepayers could afford it. That was coming out of his that was coming out of his mouth. That was coming out of
That's right.
Jeff Wright's mouth.
That's right. Yeah.
I thought that was coming out of the emergency management's mouth. Ambrose, Jerry Ambrose. I thought he's the one that said this is incomprehensible.
You know what? They were all sort of, all of them at some point or other had said that the water was fine. Even Walling went on air on the morning news and drank a glass of water.
And I know he went on, but he first picked up the phone and he talked to the people at MDEQ and people in the city, and they said, is the water safe? Because he's just a mayor. He's not the expert. He relies on other people to provide him with honest information. And he was told, yeah, no problem. It's perfectly safe. So
which isn't, because he and I had a phone conversation and correspondence over email. And so I don't know what he was, I'm sure they did tell him, but there's no way that he didn't know. I mean, the water reports were put out by the city, so, and the violation notices, so nobody can tell me that he didn't look at the violation notices. And because I had asked him on the phone, and he had sort of explained that the reason why people were so delayed in getting that information was because they had first gotten the notice in, I think, in September or something, and it took a while. So he knew. They all knew.
So you called Walling when he was mayor?
He called me.
He called you. Why did he call you?
I had wanted to sort of, because he was taking a lot of heat for what was going on, even though, like you say, he under EM law, he's got no power. He's just a pretty face. And so I had contacted him and said, I'd like to kind of tell your story. And I had asked him, he had granted me an interview because he said I asked some pretty good questions. And so he called my phone and we kind of had a conversation about it. And then you know, and that's when he had said to me, like he kind of explained, but I mean, as mayor, you still know, you see the violation notices going out, you see all that stuff. So I mean, to me, it's not just, it all, like, shit rolls downhill. So Governor Snyder for sure is the man that you want to blame, but then there's all these other people who kind of knew and didn't do what they should have, or could have done more, or ignored the issue, or whatever, you know.
Well, they had vested interest in the KWA.
That's right.
And they didn't want to jeopardize the KWA system, so they probably didn't want to look too closely in terms of the details.
That's right.
And therefore, they plead ignorance because they kind of knew, they had a feeling, but they didn't really want to know. which means
that's right.
Which means if you got a feeling that it's bad and you are a person of leadership that's responsible for a group of people, then shouldn't you act on those feelings? Shouldn't you want to know if you've got that feeling that maybe something isn't right here?
Yeah, you think, but you know, like you said, they had vested interest in the KWA.
Their whole
that, you know,
Walling and Jeff Wright, their whole focus was to push through the KWA. They didn't want anything to jeopardize the work in the KWA.
That's correct. Yeah.
That is what drove this bus that went into the polluted toxic water system.
That's right.
Is that right?
That's right. They were backing that 100%. And
if you take a look at the KWA website,
yes,
the news reports when they had their very first meeting, which was 2010, they said in the press, the very first thing they said is, the KWA is here.
Yeah.
We're going to get off of Detroit, and we're going to create jobs, and we're going to save money. That was their mission statement. That's what they were pushing through. Is we're getting off of KW, we're getting off of Detroit water. We're going to create jobs. We're going to save money. That was the banner they were flying. And with that banner became blinders, so that they just didn't want to look at anything else to jeopardize this big pipeline bus that they were created. Anyway, I'm sorry to interject.
No, that's exactly, and well, you're spot on. That's exactly right. They were just so focused on that, you know, that, you know, they didn't want to listen or consider anything else. And sort of, you know, what Robert Bocock said in his report and in our conversations was basically, they just, you know, because I had a conversation with him about it kind of privately, and, you know, and he basically, his opinion was that they just started dumping chemicals into the water, hoping that it would fix the problem, and it didn't, and it made things worse. And that's the other thing that they can't deny. They can't deny the fact that they had Robert Bocock showing up at their front door, putting out a report. They can't deny the fact that they spent $1 million on another water company to do another report, who said pretty much the same thing. So they can't deny that they didn't know.
What did the company say?
They basically said the same thing that Robert Bocock said, but they made different recommendations. They had said to put. Do you remember the name?
Do you remember the name of the company?
Not off the top of my head. I'd have to kind of look that up. But
did you put that in your article?
I have, but you know, I haven't looked at that particular article in a while. I'm pretty sure it's in there. I'd have to. My mind's kind of drawing a blank on the name of the company, but they had said that they were going to put ammonia in the water. I believe that's what they were going to add. And Robert had put out a post on Facebook saying, like, oh my God, you guys are nuts. Like, what are you thinking? And he and I had talked about that a little bit too. And basically they were just trading in chemicals. And I think his recommendation was changing the filter to a different kind of, like a charcoal filter. So they had made sort of different recommendations, but had the same, yeah, the water is bad, essentially, results.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to talk about that before we move on to Leanne? I know I keep jumping off track
that's
here.
fine. I think that's about it. I know that
But there's a shady shadow around Jeff Wright.
Around Jeff Wright now, Congressman Dan Kildee.
Kildee.
Yeah, Kildee. He is there's some shadiness around him too. My understanding is, I mean, if you look into, like, there's my understanding is his father or his, like, there's dark money there. There's alleged a pedophile in his family and stuff like that. So there's sort of all, I mean, I think every politician there is, you know, pretty, you know,
has got some shadows or are in the shadows.
Yeah.
A lot of gray area around these guys.
There is a lot of questionable backgrounds and motives and stuff like that, where you're just kind of going, huh, what, you know, what's your motive? What's in it for you? And
there has to be something in it for the shady characters. They don't do it because they have empathy like you have.
That's right.
That they put themselves in somebody else's shoes and says, I don't want to be drinking that water. I don't want to have rashes on my skin. These people look at that and say, you're getting in my way of the big deal that I got brewing, because I got a big deal and it's going to help everybody and me too.
That's right.
That's how shady characters work.
That's right.
They say we're doing it for everybody, but they're getting their beak wet.
Yeah.
With the revenue stream, that little wetting of the beak could be a big huge meal.
That's
right. Could set them up on, as they say, could put them on easy street for quite some time. That's
right, and that's why they ignored Leanne, and that's why they ignored people for so long. And since I had spoken with Leanne, since I put out that article, she was still sort of adamant that
before we get into Leanne, I still wanted to talk to you about Dane Walling. He calls you on the phone, and you guys have a nice little chat. Did you record that conversation?
I did, and then I had my computer hacked conveniently right after that, and I had lost the information. I had been taking notes at that time, but the reason I didn't do the article is because he had gone right, and he had tweeted at one of the women down there that has been affected, that the water is fine. And he kind of went on this big rant, and I was like, okay, I'm not helping you out now because you just went on the news and drank water. And I'm like, no, you just, you know, like, so I abandoned that completely because I just felt like, you know, I was like, I was going to give you a chance to sort of, you know, say your end of it, and, you know, and things like that. And then he kind of turned around and told a woman on Twitter that, you know, that's not real. The water, we drink the water every day, and so on. And so I was like, okay, I'm not gonna. I have no sympathy for you now. Like, you're on your own.
So your computer it went south, and that took your notes, your audio interview, everything
They
that.
took my audio interview and my notes were all on paper. And I, he kind of called me out of the blue actually too. So I was like scrambling around for paper and I did record. Yeah, like I had recorded it. And so my notes were on paper of our conversation and stuff. And, it's kind of chicken scratch notes. So I didn't feel I had enough to make any sort of reliable, article or argument one way or the other. It was just sort of basically going off of our own conversation. So I think, and I was really bummed out about that. And, since then I've had like, my computer was sort of well protected. Like lesson learned, right? So I just didn't feel I had enough either to go off of, my chicken scratch notes. There was nothing I could really.
How long did the conversation last with Walling?
Oh gosh, a good half hour, I think. We had a lengthy conversation, and we kind of like chummed around a little bit too, because they acquired one of our OHL, like one of our sort of minor hockey league teams, our provincial. It was they now play in. I forget the name of the hockey team. So I had made him a bet about something. I can't remember what it was now, but I said, if I win this bet, and it was like, then you have to like tweet out a picture of you wearing the Owen Sound Attack, jersey. And I can't for the life of me remember. It was just sort of a little. I think if we had lost or whatever a particular game or whatever, and or if we had won, and that sort of thing. And it was kind of it was a decent conversation, but the answers were still kind of scripted. I watched an interview done by some journalist students on YouTube just a couple of days ago, and they asked him some of the same questions that I did, and he had sort of the same answers for them. So very, very scripted.
Well, that's what you do when you're in the position of a mayor in a shady town with shady characters. You want to stay with the script.
That's right.
You don't want to go off the script. You go off the script, you step on people's toes. Right?
That's right.
Everything's got to be very cerebral. You kind of have to detach yourself from your feelings, because this is a job. It's their job.
That's right.
It's not personal. It's a job.
That's right.
But for Leanne Walters, it wasn't her job. This is her life, and this is her kids.
That's right.
So now let me allow you to talk about Leanne.
Yeah. Well, I think I mentioned earlier, like she had been to, I don't know who, but like the news everywhere, and she had been turned away. Nobody was listening to her. And she basically just sent me this email saying, can you help me? Is this something that you're interested in? Will you do this? And I was like, yeah, okay. And I got, she sent me all the doctor's reports, and she told me her story. And
I've got the doctor's reports.
That's pretty much how. Pardon?
Now, I've got the doctor's reports on the screen, the blood test results.
Yeah, that's right.
And these documents are so small. Is there a way for you to blow them up so that we can read what's there? Because I tried.
Not right off. Yeah, and there wasn't it just happened to be the way the WordPress was set up. You didn't really know until afterwards how big things were going to be. So that was the one thing that people had said about that article. But I mean,
Do you
I
still
could
have
go
those
through.
documents?
Oh yeah.
So you
Yeah,
could
all of
scan
those
them,
documents.
so you could take pictures of them and put them on your Facebook page or something.
I could, yeah. Now, since then, she had gotten her water tested at Virginia Tech, and they came back with much higher rates. And I think that's why Leanne's story has taken off even more, is because she feels like the city fudged the test results. And Virginia Tech did an independent water study where I think 8 of them, and hers was the highest, and it was way over what the city had told her. I'm trying to remember the number off the top of my head, but it was something like 15,000 ppb.
It was 13,200.
Yeah, was the highest I think that they had,
And hazardous waste is 5,000. So it's
that's right.
about 2.5 times more than hazardous waste. But this is her results from blood tests that she had with her twin sons.
Yes.
This is something that you've got in your blog post here.
Right. Yeah.
And she is talking in this blog post about doctors refusing to treat water-related health issues. Can we dig into that a little bit?
Yeah, and she wasn't the only one. There had been lots of people complaining about this on those Facebook groups, that they had been turned away as well. And I had somebody actually that I talked to for a little bit actually said that they had gone to the doctor, they had gotten the test results, and then afterwards they had sort of they refused to report it for insurance or whatever, because they didn't want to risk being put into some sort of litigation or lawsuit or anything. So the doctors were afraid to even touch it and connect it to the water in any way.
Did you talk to any other mothers that were kind of turned away?
I don't know if Rhonda was turned away, but I do know Rhonda Kelso, who's also been in the news a little bit, her daughter, who had a pre-existing condition. Now, I can't say for sure if she was turned away, but I know that because of the article that I wrote, because of Leanne's article, she went and got her water tested and her daughter tested, and she found out that her daughter had lead. And I think there were, the last time I checked, I think there was about 10,000 cases of people that had tested positive for lead, and I think something about 10 deaths associated with the lead in the water.
No, that was Legionnaire's disease. Their water
tested.
That was Legionnaire's disease.
Pardon?
The people that died, it's equated to Legionnaire's disease, not the lead. They have not associated any deaths with the lead at this point in time.
So there was a little bit of there was a little bit of confusion about that. And even when I was writing, dealing with this and talking to people, I told them that the problem is you have to connect your symptoms to the water. That was sort of what the thing that I was so adamant about and really pushed on Facebook, is I need to be able to connect your rashes to the water, and somehow or rather, or I need to be able to connect these two things. I can't, and that's why the council and government wasn't listening to anybody, because they were like, well, that could be from anything, pin it on the water. So I think that's I know Leanne and I know several others, like I said, I think the number was up to 10,000 cases now. So all those people were getting, and I went through literally one by one and told people, get your water tested. And because they would argue, they would say, well, my water smells all right, or my water is fine, or whatever. And I'm like, get your water tested. So,
well, getting their water tested would be an expense to them. I went to find out about getting my water tested, and it's going to cost over $100 to get my water tested for lead. So when you're on a fixed income and you don't have the money like they don't have in Flint, when you say go get your water tested and they are told it's going to cost money, real money, even if it's $20, they're going to say, I don't think so, because I'm going to trust what I hear in the press, what I hear from my elected officials. They say it's safe. And they shouldn't have to test their water. They know that those that had discoloration, those that had where it smelled, they said, this isn't my problem. You can smell it. You can see the color. You pay for the test. I think that's what their agitation was at that time, is I don't want to pay. You pay. It's your problem. You fix it. And they wouldn't listen to them. And that's probably the reason that they were so agitated, because when they went to the doctor, insurance wasn't paying for it. They had to pay for it out of their own pocket.
That's right. And now what had happened was the city's responsible for doing the testing, and they would come out to your house and test it for free. And there are like home testing kits that you can buy. And I know the whole, like, you know, I live on a very limited budget. So $10 does make or break you, you know, here and there. And so I know that people were told that they could City Hall and someone would come out and test their water. And now I want to say that there was an organization that was offering to do it for free, but still it was something that I pushed anyways, because if you know, like, you know, because I can't tell everybody's financial situation. So I was just really adamant about, you should have your water tested if you can. And I believe was it Melissa who had outsourced companies that were doing it for free.
How did you get connected with Melissa and when?
Just over Facebook, on the Flint Water. There's several of them now. There's like a class action group. There's a Flint Water Crisis group. And she was on Twitter as well. And I think that's basically how I had gotten into contact with her, was over one of the Facebook groups.
Was that in April, March? Was it early on?
It was pretty early on. I'm trying to think about my dates, but I can't remember exactly when I had joined those groups, or they had sent me an invite actually to them, because I didn't know about them. And so so that's sort of how I came into contact with her. And like you say, when this story kind of hit, when I posted this and people were freaked out about it, I mean, what else do? You just say, if you have to get your water tested, because people were afraid, people were scared, money or not, they were freaked out by this. And all I could offer was to get their water tested. So, and regardless of their income, it's worked, because there's so many people who had managed to get their water tested. And I do know people who their water came out fine, and which is really good. And but their neighbors didn't, so it was kind of all over the place for whatever reason.
So what's the story about doctors refusing to treat water-related health issues?
Now I know that Hurley Medical Center, I know that they had been one of the hospitals that sort of refused. And I think there was a doctor that had sort of not listened to them, but I think Hurley's the hospital. I don't know which doctor specifically Leanne had gone to, but some people on Facebook weren't very specific also as well. They just said their doctors refused. And, you know, at that time, you're just trying to get people aware of the issue, of what to do. And so, like, I wasn't going to sort of go into which doctors, which I do know that Hurley was sort of a front runner in telling people, or turning people away.
And why were they turning them away? So when you went in there with a rash, or you had complaints that you associated to the water, they would you get turned away?
Yeah, they get turned away, or they refuse to document it. Like, that was sort of the big thing, was they refused to document it. There was somebody that had received a letter for some reason for his insurance, and then he went back to the doctor, and the doctor had actually said that he regretted doing that because he doesn't want to get caught up in any legal battles about it, you know, like any insurance. Or at that point, I don't know if they knew how big it was. I kind of think at first doctors were afraid that the insurance companies would be, you know, battling. So I really don't know what the reason why, specifically, whether they were kind of told if they were silenced, you know, like, or if they just were afraid of being dragged into court over an insurance matter, type of
So
thing.
you didn't really dig into it that much in terms of why doctors would not document issues that may be caused through the water.
No, and the reason with that was because there was just so many people, were like all over Facebook were going up and down saying doctors were saying the same thing. There was just so many, and I couldn't, you know, look into every single case, you know, myself. So, you know, and this was all kind of hitting at once too. So, you know, you kind of have to go. You're kind of going, okay. You're kind of think on the fly, you know, like I put the article out there, and it just kind of exploded. Like, people were, I've had this happen, I've had this happen, I've had this happen.
I talk to people. I tell other journalists, I tell other people that doctors refuse to treat or talk to people in Flint about health issues related to the water, and they don't believe me. They say that could not be. And so I'm trying to find out, if it was such a big issue back then, why isn't anybody talking about it now? Anybody in the media? They're trying to turn over all these rocks to find out what's going to come out from underneath them. But this, if it was widespread, all these residents were not getting the medical attention or the lab slips to get their children or themselves checked for lead at that particular time. Why isn't anybody talking about it, mentioning it at all? It's like total crickets, total silence, like it never happened. Never, you know.
I think
what's the deal? And where
that medical doctor that worked.
Go ahead. Oh, you just dropped off. Well, hopefully Kelly will return. Hi, Jack Olmsted. I'm hanging out, talking to Kelly Mooney. She was the first journalist on the spot, independent journalist, not controlled by the strings in Flint or Michigan, to delve into the residents' issues related to the water back in 2015. Kelly was joining us on her cell phone. She had it propped up on her windowsill. And you know what happened? I bet you I know what happened. I think that's it. I think we're going to have to pick up Kelly's interview at another time. She was using her cell phone to do the Google Hangouts with me. And when you use your cell phone for Google Hangouts or for any live streaming, it zaps the battery. It zaps the juice. So I think that's what happened. She doesn't have any more battery left in her cell phone. So she is not going to be able to join us. Technical issues. It took us probably about 20 minutes for her to get the right position so that she could have some light on her, because she was in darkness, and she had to prop up her cell phone so that it would work. She wouldn't have to hold it all the time. And one little detail that I forgot to mention was you need to plug your phone into the charger so that the battery wouldn't be an issue. As you can see, if you were watching our discussion, that is the issue. Anyway, I was talking to Kelly about the article that she wrote back in 2015. Right here, this is her website, talking about how doctors refuse to treat water-related health issues. And this is very interesting and very disturbing if you are a person who tends to feel doctors' first responsibility is to the health and welfare of their patients, of the people, that they are there to serve the people and their health. And as I was talking to Kelly before her battery, I'm assuming her battery died on her cell phone, there isn't anybody, nobody in the mainstream media, there aren't any residents talking about this issue that apparently was big news a year ago. We're talking March, April of last year, that doctors in the Flint area, and you're talking about Hurley Medical Center, refused to document any health issues related to the water. And speculation is insurance. They didn't want to get caught up into some kind of litigation. Well, I can see my one viewer that was listening to me is gone. So thanks so much for watching. I'm sorry that we had some technical issues on this live stream, but we're going to pick it up with Kelly at another time. Check us out on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube to find out when we will be broadcasting part 2. And for our upcoming interviews, I think I've done about 8 interviews this week. Everything you can see is on Facebook, on the GMO Free News Facebook page, as well as our GMO Free News YouTube channel. We stream on Google Hangouts. Everything is recorded and posted on YouTube. And then clips are created and posted on Facebook and Twitter, because over on Facebook and Twitter, they don't want to watch an hour discussion. They want to watch 3 minutes, 6 minutes. That's about it. They want the elevator pitch, not the deep dive. So check us out on social media, and I will see you next time. Here, have some clapping. There. That's the noise that we can use. That's stereo. That's some noise that we can use at the end of the show. All right. Next time.